the crappiest roommate you've ever heard of, a couple of sleep screamers, and an ex who turned the upstairs of a house into a hellscape. All that and more with these terrible roommate stories. Reddit, what are your worst roommate stories? This is actually about my friend's roommate, but that's hardly important. My friend's roommate comes stumbling into their dorm room freshman year. It's blatantly obvious that she is drunk beyond reason. She starts shouting, "I need to go to the bathroom," which wakes up my friend. She sees her roommate just staggering back and forth through the doorway. She stayed in bed because she didn't really know how to react. Her roommate returns to the door once more and reiterates that she needs to go to the bathroom. Before her roommate had left to go to a party, she placed her white Mac laptop on her chair by her desk. The rationale here is that we believe the white from the laptop on the seat made the chair look like a porcelain load throne in the mind of her drunken roommate. So she approaches the chair, pulls down her pants, and sits on her laptop. My friend braced herself because this situation can only go one way. As she braced for impact, her roommate releases a sigh of relief that is unfortunately synchronized with the release of her bladder and bowels. Despite her laptop being covered in bodily fluids, her roommate denies that this ever happened. Story 2. Apparently, I'm bad at summarizing stories, so this is super long, but I need to get it out there and off my chest. I have a couple stories for you, courtesy of my crappy roommate, nicknamed Poopy Plunger for the obvious reasons. 1. She clogged the upstairs toilet one day and didn't tell anyone. My other roommate, M, found out when she was upstairs cooking and happened to need to use the washroom. Fortunately, M's boyfriend unclogged it for us. Unfortunately, he didn't want to clean up the mess, and I mean it really wasn't his problem, so M wasn't gonna make him. M started cleaning it, but had texted me just before. When I saw the text, I went upstairs. She cleaned half of it, and I cleaned the poopy plunger with lots of bleach and hot water. 2. I woke up one morning and noticed the downstairs bathroom, which is the one we all use since it's by the bedrooms, toilet was looking a little low on water in the bowl. Figured it was clogged and didn't feel like dealing with it then. It was a big mistake. So I used the upstairs bathroom and I went back to bed. Well, Poopy Plunger decided she was going to use the washroom. I would like to give her the benefit of the doubt here about knowing not to use the toilet, but she blew that months ago at this point. I heard her enter the washroom and the toilet seat lift up. I thought to myself, don't do it, Poopy Plunger. But of course she did it. Like, JFC, I was so mad. I texted M letting her know what happened, but to make matters worse, Poopy Plunger had a friend staying over. And guess who else decided to use the toilet? Poopy Plunger's partner in poopy crime. I had to get up and check to see that it was in fact clogged, and Jesus, I damn near threw up from that sight. It was so gross. Like, there was just poop, TP, and no water whatsoever in that bowl. I'm going to tell you now that Poopy Plunger uses exactly too much toilet paper. It gets to the point where M and I would just bring the TP with us so we wouldn't have to have our Poopy Plunger waste our nice, soft, and fluffy TP. A plunger was going to do no use in this situation, but I have to explain this to you. Anyway, M was out while all this was happening, and I was relaying it to her via text. When she got home, not knowing that Poopy Plunger was home, she ran downstairs and made a nasty comment about how gross it was and that Poopy Plunger was going to clean it up. M put the plunger in the bathroom for Poopy Plunger. How nice of her, huh? But here's the kicker. We have two plungers. One that is more of a sink clog. M's boyfriend clogged the upstairs bathroom once before, and it was an emergency, and that's the only plunger the grocery store had. They eventually bought a better one a few days later, so toilet was dealt with correctly. We also have one that's for a toilet, but has these little ribs in it to create a vacuum and suck the clog up, I guess? I'm not really sure how it works. But Poopy Plunger uses the wrong plunger and just gave up. So M put the right plunger, but you still pretty much have to unclog it by hand, on top of the closed toilet lid in hopes of Poopy Plunger actually cleaning the mess. Eventually, she did, but left both plungers, which were covered in crap, sitting on the bathroom floor. I just about friggin' lost it on her. I caved and washed both plungers plus the whole bathroom because that poop and poopy water was probably everywhere. This is probably the worst of stories for this roommate. I've had other awful roommates, but they were mostly just awful humans in the behavior department and unnecessarily loud. Poopy Plunger is also my most recent roommate, and it was an accumulation of small things that she did that made me hate her. We never actually did anything to her directly, no payback or anything, but apparently my nickname was the bitch for whatever reason. Maybe because I told her to do her friggin' dishes before she leaves for a weekend, and I called her out on leaving her two best friends alone in our house, so Emma and I hung out with them while she went to a party with her new university friends. I don't know. Maybe I am a bitch. Story 3. Circa 2001. It was my first apartment, and I wasn't a good judge of roommate character back then. I was working at a welding shop and had befriended this big Mexican guy after driving him home from work enough to start hanging out at his house after work for a few beers, and his mom's excellent biscuits and gravy she'd make for us. Naturally, we thought it would be a good idea to roommate at my place to cut down on expense. Little did I know he was one of those drinkers that black out and destroy everything. Each day after work was him with a case of beer and getting in arguments with kids in Yahoo chat rooms over a mic until he would pass out. It escalated. He quit going to work, and I'd come home with him passed out, vomit all over the floors, piss in the corners, half-eaten pizza face down in the couch, the works. I started telling him he needed to leave, but he wasn't hearing it. Eventually, he got arrested for something and ended up in jail. I was free for a while. He got up and I woke up to banging on my door. I didn't let him in. His mom collected all his things when he got locked up. Fast forward to recently, I'd been overseas for 6 years and moved back to my home state afterward, and recently stumbled across his Facebook page after not having seen or heard him in 13 years. We talked. He's doing really well now, training to be an addiction counselor, and I'm happy for him. Story 4. I had to work abroad for 3 months. I came home to discover the bathroom light bulb had blown just after I left. Roomie felt she couldn't change it herself, so called an electrician. Electrician laughed at her and told her she could save a fortune and do it herself. She still hadn't done it by the time I got back. Needless to say, I fixed it in about 5 minutes. It would have been sooner, but I couldn't stop chuckling at the thought of her crapping in the dark for months. Story 5. One time in college, I was having a really awesome sex dream, but then I woke up and realized it was prompted by my roommate's banging noises. We had ultra-thin walls. I normally wouldn't care, but this was at 7 a.m. and it was loud enough to wake me up. The worst part was hearing my roommate cheerfully say, "What a great way to start the morning," as he escorted this homeless-looking old man out the front door. Unfortunately, this would be the first of many homeless-looking old men to bend my roommate over. Story 6. I had a roommate who would attempt to leave unjustified, scathing, passive-aggressive notes for just everyone. Our apartment neighbors, cars parked outside, and even our landlady. The kind of notes with overly polite language, underlines, and randomly capitalized words. Always written in red marker. Also, always rude enough to get the crap beaten out of her. And always signed, "From both of us." I spent that year following her around and removing the notes as quickly and quietly as possible. Story 7. My first roommate at college was a girl who had some severe issues. She was bulimic and would cut herself. She never talked to me, and I only deduced these things by finding the bloody tissues under her bed, and having just lived with my brother who was suicidal and self-harmed a lot, and also by following the trail of vomit smell to the closet where she apparently kept it. Hell if I know why, since we had a suite and our own attached bathroom. She would also bring up containers of food to leave out to make it look like she was eating. When I talked to the RA about this and they forced her to speak with a therapist, she threatened to smother me in my sleep and told me it was in my best interest to move out. My first year at college was, not fun. Story 8. The worst story I have is just really creepy. She was a great roommate, but I couldn't sleep right for a month after. So it's literally the first night we are sleeping in the same room, so things are a little awkward since we only know each other's names. But night falls and we go to sleep. I wake up to the sound of her yelling, "No, no, 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 no!" And then she flings all of her blankets off her bed and onto the floor. At this point, I'm freaked out, so I ask if she's okay, and she doesn't reply. Instead, she sits up and looks around, sees the window, and kind of whispers, "Not the window." Then she stands up and walks to the window. At this point, I realize she must be sleepwalking or crazy. She gets to the window, grabs the lock with both hands, and is locking and unlocking the window over and over again while whispering to herself. She never opened it, but after about 3 minutes of that, she lets go and says, "That'll do." then starts walking back to her bed. But when she was passing by my bed, she stopped and turned to face me. Then she just stood there, asleep, I hope, staring at me for 2 minutes. Then she started whispering to herself again, walked past her bed to the door, dragged her hand down the middle of it, turned around and walked to her bed, and went back to sleep. Story 9. One of my dear friends has night terrors. The first night that I met her at a big group gathering, at the time she was a friend of a friend who thought we'd like each other and was bringing her along to introduce us, she fell asleep before the end of the party and we couldn't wake her up. Whatever, she's crashing here now. All's well until about 2 a.m. when she starts screaming. It's clearly something she's adapted to after years of having night terrors. She screams and screams and screams her head off, but in a whisper. It was horrifying. And once she's asleep, it's impossible to wake her up. So she just whisper screamed her lungs out for an hour or so, frozen completely still, and then went back to bed. She slept over a few times and it's horrifying every time. It's more creepy because they're so quiet. Story 10. I made the mistake of living with friends and it all went to crap. They were all slobs and I got really tired of cleaning up after them, but that wasn't the worst of it. No. The worst of it was my one friend's boyfriend. You see, she had previously been in a bad relationship, and all of us promised we would say if we thought she was in another one. Did that work? No. Everyone hated her new boyfriend, but I was the only one that flat out told her she was being used and she should get out. I became enemy number 1, as suddenly everyone else was so supportive of her relationship. They plotted ways to get back at me. I actually overheard them saying what they were going to do around the apartment to piss me off. Joke's on her, she's divorced now, and one of the others in a spiraling to hell relationship. The one I still remained friends with, she didn't plot, she was just a slob, is still contently married. I did get a half-hearted apology one time, but it was cut off when I said I wasn't sorry for anything. Story 11. Got a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue for my birthday from a friend. I went out of town. Roommate proceeds to drink half the bottle and then fill it up with water like I wouldn't notice, and then had the audacity to lie about it and continues to till this day. I do believe he doesn't remember though. He got laid off after getting a DUI, proceeded to drink himself stupid for 8 months, and was eventually taking our rent money to pay his car bill. Didn't even realize till we had an eviction notice. Forced him to get his parents to pay for our 3 months of rent he didn't pay, but I still have an eviction on my record. I have a copy of the notice that says I wasn't evicted, so wherever I go I have to show that to future landlords or when I buy a house so we don't get denied. Story 12. I lived with a roommate who is a complete and total narcissist. It was a $1,500 a month apartment, 3-bedroom in a nice part of town that should have been $500 a person. But he was a lazy piece of garbage and maybe contributed, $150 of that? His dumbass girlfriend wasn't much better, contributing about the same amount per month, but she was at least more pleasant to talk to. I lived with them for about 6 months and paid the $1,200 I was paying to cover the rent because I didn't want my credit to take the hit that would result from an eviction. The whole time, they were going out to eat and whining and dining each other. Meanwhile, I could never do anything because I was burning up all my cash just trying to cover the rent. Of course, I would try to talk to the dude and say, man, this can't continue. It's stressing me out. I can't afford to buy food most of the time. But since he was a piece of garbage narcissist, he would turn the argument around to somehow make it, I was ungrateful or something. The end finally came when I spoke with the leasing office people and explained that while I was loving the apartment, I was the only one who was really giving the property managers any real money and the situation was untenable. I also said I would love to continue doing business with them, possibly with a smaller apartment, but I was locked into my lease and couldn't afford to pay an early termination fee because of these assholes I lived with that were sucking me dry. They looked up the paperwork and said, well, it looks like only piece of garbage filled out lease paperwork, so you have no legal obligation to pay the rent. Is that so? I responded. I thought for a few moments, then said to the agent, you should probably get eviction paperwork ready for next month. I have no intention of continuing to fund their lavish lifestyle. What other units do you have? I went back to the apartment and began packing. One day they came home to see that my bedroom was empty and my car was gone. They started packing like crazy for 3 days, having to throw a lot of it away because they were going to get locked out before they could get it all. On the second day, the power was turned off because it was in my name at the old apartment. And now that I had my own place, I wasn't about to pay for the power in 2 different places. So they had to frantically pack in sweltering July heat in total darkness. F those people. Story 13. Well, here's my ex-roommate's story. Dated a girl for a while. She moved in and we ended up breaking up. I let her stay and move into one of the upstairs bedrooms because I made the mistake of feeling sorry for her. Fast forward a few years. Yes, I'm a huge pushover and way too forgiving. I think she finally broke me out of that. I had to finally kick her ass out. It started small over the years, with her just being a general slob. However, she had the upstairs of the house more or less to herself. Large bedroom, her own full bathroom, and nobody ever went up there to bother her. She also had a pet rabbit. I liked rabbits. They're cute and adorable. This rabbit, however, was not taken care of. She went back to Arizona for Christmas to visit family and asked me to watch the rabbit. Sure, no problem. I go up to check on the rabbit, give it food, water, clean cage, etc. And the upstairs looks like a crack house. There is trash everywhere, just piles of dirty dishes and food wrappers and just general garbage. The bathroom looked like it had never been cleaned at all, just layers upon layers of makeup residue and hair and trash. Ugh. And worse, the rabbit's cage was this tiny thing designed for small rabbits, and was too small for this one since she never let the rabbit out of the cage, and the entire cage was filled with rabbit crap. The nails on the rabbit were long enough you knew they hadn't been taken care of in a while. I was horrified, but me, being stupid, didn't immediately pick up a phone and complain and tell her to get her bags packed when she got back. No. I was stupid. I cleaned upstairs, went out, built the rabbit a new, much larger cage, and took care of it. When she got back, I told her flat out it wouldn't happen again. Fast forward a few months, and the rabbit is put to sleep for being sick. She starts posting on Facebook about how sad she was, etc. I sat there thinking, girl, you didn't even take care of it. Why are you sad? I even offered to help her take the rabbit cage down after it happened. She declined. Fast forward again, and I'm wondering why all of a sudden the house is crawling with bugs. I start seeing ants and roaches in larger and larger numbers. Not cool. Then I start noticing an odor in the house. Something rotten. I'm thinking something got in one of the attics and died, a squirrel or mouse or something, and that's what's caused this. So I venture upstairs and check the attic. Nothing. So I go to the other side, which is accessible from the roommate's closet. I open the door, and once again, the room is a disaster. Everything from blackened, shriveled banana peels to fast food bags to piles of dirty dishes and clothes. Oh, and bugs crawling over it. I, understandably I think, was a bit upset. Even the rabbit's cage was still there, still filled with rabbit crap. I was confident she hadn't changed the litter from when she got back after Christmas to when the rabbit died. I told her flat out she needed to clean her room now, today, this instant, because I wasn't gonna have the upstairs of my house become a garbage dump. She wasn't exactly happy with me, but I didn't give a hoot at that point. I stormed out and left for a bit before I snapped and did something I would really regret. So, being my dumb self, I assumed that given the situation and context that the upstairs would then be cleaned, that I got a point across. So I go upstairs a few weeks later to change the air filter in the AC system, and lo and behold, the room is not only still filled with the exact same stuff it was before, there is new trash. I'm done at this point. I'm livid. I tell her when she gets home to clean the upstairs, pack her bags, and get out by the end of the week. She gives me a song and dance sob story about how it won't happen ever again. You're right, it won't. You are not staying here. No one should be surprised when they find out I ended up having to clean it up. The carpet was a loss and the entire house had to be fumigated. I even had to repaint the walls to cover stains since nothing would get them off. I took pictures. There are episodes of Hoarders that looked cleaner. Story 14. So I lived in a dorm room with two other guys. There was one bunk bed and one single. I slept in the single and the other two at the bunk bed. We'll call the guy on the bottom bunk Larry and the guy on the top Eric. It was Saturday night, and we all came back drunk from parties at different times. So it's about 2, 3 a.m., and we're all in bed. All of a sudden, I begin to hear this faint moaning. I pick up my head and see Larry laughing his ass off but trying to stay quiet. Up above him is Eric, who is apparently watching adult videos on his phone, out loud and jerking it. Their bed was shaking. One of the most awkward experiences. The worst part was that this was the first of 3 times that this happened. We never confronted him. Story 15. Not actually my story, but a friend of mine had plenty rough time on her first week of living in a new place with a bunch of guys. She originally wanted to rent with her friend, but unfortunately her friend pulled out of the university course at the local university they were attending together. So she ended up having to find somewhere to rent alone. She ended up renting a room in a house shared with 4 other guys, also students. After the first week, she informed them that she was going to the shop, and they asked her to pick up some toilet tissue for the house. Unfortunately, she forgot, and they were upset about it. So the next day, after being out of the house all day, she came to find her bedroom walls and bed sheets smeared in crap. It was their idea of teaching her a lesson about forgetting to get toilet tissue. Story 16. My freshman year, I had a crazy roommate. He was a bigger guy with a porn stash who thought all the women around him desired him. He tried very hard to make people like him and failed miserably. He also had some terrible roommate habits. For example, he would set multiple alarms in the morning and not wake up when they went off, which forced me to get up and wake him up every time. It was a college dorm, so we slept in the same room. He would also drive like 80 miles per hour on residential roads to try and impress people. Anyway, after 4 weeks of creeping everyone out in the hall and alienating himself, someone took his iPad as a joke. He freaked out and threatened multiple people, saying he would hack their computers and destroy their lives. Eventually, someone told him his iPad was in one of my friend's rooms. He went inside, grabbed the guy, and put a knife to his throat and asked him where the iPad was. The cops came and he was expelled. But after that, I didn't have to share my room for the rest of the year, so that was cool.